Thanksgiving dinner was supposed to be warm cranberry sauce, roasted turkey, and fake family smiles. I had barely taken a seat when my sister Rebecca raised her glass and said with a smirk, "How does it feel being the most useless one here, Maddie?" Laughter erupted around the table. My father chuckled. My mother looked away. Cousins exchanged amused glances like it was just another inside joke at my expense. I used to shrink in moments like this. Say nothing. Smile politely. Swallow the shame like gravy poured over dry turkey. Not this time. I set down my fork, looked Rebecca straight in the eye, and asked calmly, "How does it feel when this useless one stops paying your bills?" Silence. Thick. Immediate. Absolute. Her grin vanished. My father's fork hovered midair. My mother froze mashed potatoes, trembling on the spoon. That was the moment the fabric of our family stitched with fake pleasantries, and my silent sacrifice began to unravel, and I wasn't done. Not even close. It wasn't always like this. Or maybe it was, but I didn't know how to name it yet. I used to believe one day they'd see me, that if I worked hard enough, stayed helpful enough, small enough, quiet enough, maybe they'd call me something other than the responsible one with that dull, dismissive pride that feels more like expectation than love. While other girls in middle school were hiding lip gloss in their backpacks, I was hiding grocery coupons. Just in case Mom forgot the shopping list again. I was 12 and already memorizing the weekly specials at the local market because if I didn't, no one would. Rebecca was the golden one. Loud, charismatic, chaotic. She walked into rooms like the air belonged to her and left a mess behind without apology. And still always she was loved for it. She got rewarded for rebellion. I got ignored for reliability. When I was 14, I got my first part-time job shelving books at the neighborhood library. After school, I'd do homework in the break room, then clock in. My fingers smelled like paper and dust. My back ached from squatting between rows. The paycheck was barely over $100 every 2 weeks, but I remember the first time I handed my check to Mom so she could buy groceries. She took it without hesitation and said, "You're such a good girl, Maddie." That was the only thank you I ever got. That winter, I overheard my parents whispering in the kitchen about the overdue heating bill. Rebecca was sprawled on the living room floor, painting her nails, talking loudly about which boy might ask her to the snowflake formal. I stayed up that night calculating how many shifts I could pick up over Christmas break. I handed my parents $200 in cash, everything I had saved, and Dad clapped me on the shoulder like I had just mowed the lawn. No one said, "We're proud of you." No one said you shouldn't have to do this. That was when I learned something important. Being selfless doesn't earn you love. It earns you more responsibility, more silence, more weight. The pattern became a cycle. Rebecca wrecked Dad's car the summer after her senior year. I covered the deductible with the college fund I had quietly built. Mom got sick and couldn't cook for a month. I fed the family and restocked the pantry. When something went wrong, no one panicked because they knew I'd handle it. I was the duct tape holding everything together, invisible but essential. One Christmas stands out the most. Rebecca got a new tablet from Dad, a spa day voucher from Mom, and diamond earrings from her boyfriend. I got a pink fleece robe. No card, no hug, just a robe. And the thing is, I wasn't even hurt. Not right away. I told myself their silence meant trust, that maybe they didn't buy me gifts because they believed in my strength. It took me years to realize, if someone only loves you when you're useful to them, it's not love. It's exploitation wrapped in politeness. But I didn't say that back then. I just nodded, smiled, took the robe, and went right back to making sure the rest of them never had to feel discomfort. By 25, I was the ghost donor of the family, sending money home every month, covering Rebecca's emergencies, contributing to school fees for her daughter, Olivia. They called me steady, responsible, the one who never asks for anything. They were right. Because I didn't ask. I didn't even allow myself to want. But the older I got, the more I started to wonder what would happen if I stopped performing. Would they even notice me? Would I still be loved? Or would I vanish entirely now that I had nothing left to give? That question stayed buried in my chest for years, like a splinter too deep to reach. Until one Thanksgiving, my sister smiled across a table full of roasted turkey and fake warmth and said I was useless. And just like that, the splinter rose to the surface. Sharp, clear, unignorable. I was 17 when the envelope from NYU arrived, thick, glossy, and trembling slightly in my hands as I carried it up the porch steps. It wasn't just an acceptance letter. It was oxygen, a way out. A chance to walk through city streets with purpose, to wear blazers and hold coffee like I belonged. I could see it me in Manhattan chasing something bigger than survival. It was more than college. It was validation. I even got a partial scholarship. Not a full ride, but enough to feel real. I remember clutching that letter to my chest like a golden ticket. For the first time, I allowed myself to believe the world might see me, maybe even love me for something more than what I could give. And then, Rebecca came home. She was 20, dropped out of some expensive private college out west, said she was burnt out and needed time to find herself. What she really meant was she needed help. Her student loans were a mess, credit score in the toilet. Her boyfriend had just left her taking half her savings and her self-worth with him. I overheard the conversation in the kitchen one night, Mom's voice low and anxious. "We don't have enough in savings to cover this, Graham. And then, maybe Malene could go local, help us out for a year or two, just until things stabilize." It wasn't a question. It was a quiet decision made about me, without me. The next morning, over eggs and burnt toast, Mom said, "Sweetheart, have you considered community college? You'd be close to home. We could really use your help." I didn't fight. I didn't cry. I just nodded. And when I called NYU to decline the offer, the woman on the other end of the line sounded more heartbroken than I did. That day, I enrolled at a local school in Seattle, picked up 2 jobs, used the $3,000 I'd saved for textbooks and rent to pay down Rebecca's student loans instead. She never said thank you. She just posted a photo that week from a rooftop brunch, resetting my life. Gratitude. I told myself I was doing the right thing. That family mattered, that Rebecca would eventually stabilize and the scales would tip back toward balance. They didn't. Instead, she became the face of the family's pride again. She's so creative, a free spirit. She just needs a little support. And me, I was dependable, steady, the shadow that kept the golden one shining. My name only came up when something needed fixing, when a bill came due, when the consequences got too heavy, and I let it happen, because I was terrified that if I stopped giving, I'd disappear completely. But something shifted the year I turned 30. By then, I had carved out a decent life for myself, managing finances for 3 startups, working remotely, pulling in 6 figures. No glamour, no excess, just quiet, deliberate stability. And still, Rebecca always had emergencies. The texts never stopped. "Hey, sis, quick favor." "Our car broke down, just need a bit to cover repairs." "School is asking for a last-minute tuition fee, help." I never hesitated. I transferred the money. I went back to work. But one Sunday afternoon, something cracked. I opened my banking app and saw another overdraft notice, this time from an account linked to Rebecca's cafe, one I had stupidly guaranteed for years ago when her credit was too bad to qualify. She had never cleaned up the mess. She just moved on. And I cleaned up the stains. Every time. This time I didn't feel fear. I felt fire. What would happen if I stopped? If I didn't reply? If I let the pieces fall where she dropped them? Would the world split in two? Would I become invisible? Or would I finally see myself? That thought stuck with me, needled its way through my work calls, through my sleepless nights, through the sound of the kettle boiling at 6:30 every morning. And then 3 days before Thanksgiving, my phone buzzed with a new message. "Hey sis, got a sec, need help with something real quick. Call me." That tone, I knew it. Casual, entitled, transactional. I sat still for a full minute before I sighed and dialed. She picked up on the first ring. "Finally," she said, no hello. "So I'm expanding the cafe. Cute little spot in Queen Anne, but I need about $30K for the lease and startup stuff. Figured you'd be the best person to ask, you know. Since you believe in family," her voice effortlessly chipper, like asking for a cup of sugar, not someone's annual savings. 30,000, I repeated. "Yeah," she said breezily. "Come on, you're always going on about budgets and investments. This is like your thing. Think of it as supporting women in business. Girl power." I almost laughed. This from the same sister who once rolled her eyes and said, "Ugh, finance is boring. Who even needs all that math crap?" Now she was using feminism as a discount code. "Becca," I said slowly, "that's a lot of money." She scoffed. "You make 6 figures. What else are you even doing with it? You don't have kids or a husband. You live in a shoebox and eat frozen dinners." That did it. I felt something sharp stir in my chest. Cold, electric, final. "You don't know how I live," I said. "And I'm not a bank." There was a beat of silence. Then her voice went cold. "Wow," she said. "So this is who you really are. Selfish, bitter, jealous maybe. Just admit it. You like holding money over people's heads. Always the quiet martyr." I smiled, but not with warmth. "No, I like boundaries," I said. "You're unbelievable," she hissed. "After everything I've done for this family, I cut her off." "Everything you've done," I repeated. "Becca, I paid your rent, your car, your kids' coats. I paid off your loan in 2018 and never once said a word. I believed in you when no bank would. I risked my credit so you could pretend to be an entrepreneur. And now you mock me, in public." She was silent. "Don't worry," I added, calm as glass. "This useless one won't be funding anything anymore." And I hung up. I sat there, phone still warm in my hand, heart pounding, not from regret, but from something new, something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. That night I opened the drawer full of folders, receipts, contracts proof of every time I had bailed her out, saved her from herself. If she wanted a scene at Thanksgiving, I'd be ready, not with cruelty, but with truth. And for once, I wasn't scared to be seen. The night before Thanksgiving, I laid everything out on my bedroom floor, like a silent war map. Receipts, bank transfers, signed agreements, screenshots of texts, wire instructions, documents no one knew I had kept because no one ever thought I would need to prove what I gave. But they underestimated me. They always did. Each folder was a chapter of my invisibility. The $3,000 I wired when Rebecca's cafe nearly defaulted on rent. The $800 check I sent when Olivia's daycare threatened to drop her. The business contract she signed in 2018 giving me 60% stake in the cafe in exchange for covering her balloon loan. She never read the paperwork, just smiled and said, "You're a lifesaver." Now her lifeline was about to be cut. I didn't sleep much that night, not out of anxiety but out of precision. I reviewed everything, labeled it, highlighted key clauses, forwarded backups to my lawyer Erica Jansen just in case. When I closed my laptop around 3 a.m., the air in my apartment felt different, lighter, like I had vacuumed out every trace of guilt I'd been trained to carry. The next day I dressed with intention, slate gray dress pants, a deep burgundy blouse, Hair sleek, makeup clean. Not glamorous, but sharp. I wanted to feel visible. Thanksgiving dinner was hosted at my parents' house, a colonial-style home with white shutters, a long driveway, and the exact kind of curated normalcy people post on Facebook to hide everything they don't say. The dining room was glowing with golden light and thick with tension. I don't think anyone noticed but me. The table was set to perfection china from my grandmother, cloth napkins shaped like roses candlesticks lit too early. The smell of rosemary and cinnamon drifted through the air, but beneath it I could almost smell the performance. I arrived 5 minutes late. On purpose, just enough to be noticed. "Meline, sweetie," my mother called from the kitchen. "Come sit next to your sister." Oh, of course. Rebecca was already in full form, laughing loudly, gesturing dramatically, as she told a story about the loyal customer base at her cafe. She wore a wine-colored silk blouse, chunky gold earrings, and her nails were perfectly manicured. She looked like success. She looked like she believed her own lie. I sat beside her without a word. Dinner began. Forks clinked. Wine poured. My father asked for the sweet potatoes. My cousin made a joke about online dating. Someone passed the bread. And then right on cue, Rebecca struck. "So, Maddie," she said, her voice sugary, too loud. "How does it feel being the most useless one here?" The room paused. It was like everyone knew it was rude, but not enough to object. Her husband chuckled. My cousin stifled a laugh. Even my father smirked into his wine. My mother looked down, face stiff with polite embarrassment. Rebecca leaned back, satisfied. She had delivered the punchline. And that's when I smiled, not the tight smile they were used to, not the embarrassed or deflecting kind. It was calm, collected, dangerous. I set down my fork, turned to her, looked her in the eye. "How does it feel," I asked, "when this useless one stops paying your bills?" Silence. It dropped over the table like a guillotine. Rebecca blinked, confused. "What?" I didn't blink. "The utility bills I covered when your cafe overdrafted, the tuition I paid for Olivia's preschool, the business loan I co-signed when no one else would, the $40,000 I wired in 2018 to save your cafe from collapsing." I turned to the table, every face frozen. "I have receipts, by the way, in case anyone here actually cares." Her husband gawked. My cousin coughed awkwardly. My father set his wine glass down too hard. Rebecca's voice cracked. "You're making this up." I reached into my bag, pulled out a folder, and laid it gently on the table. I didn't open it. Just let it sit there like a bomb with a visible fuse. "I'm not. It's all here. Bank statements, contracts, signed ownership agreements." She paled. "You own 60%, I said evenly. "Of the cafe. You signed it when I bailed you out. You didn't read the contract. That's on you." My father's voice cut through the air like a whip. "Meline, that's enough." I turned to him. "No, Dad. It's finally enough." I stood slowly. My napkin fell to the floor unnoticed. For over a decade I have paid, cleaned, covered, and fixed while she mocked me, while you all laughed. You let her call me useless, and you joined in. My mother whispered, "We didn't know." "You didn't want to know," I said. Rebecca's face twisted. "This is pathetic. What do you want? Applause? You're ruining Thanksgiving." I smiled again, colder this time. "No. I'm removing myself from a table where I was only ever valued for what I could provide." I picked up the folder in my coat. I canceled the monthly transfer. I've notified the bank of my intention to sell my stake. You'll need to figure out how to run a business without the useless one. Rebecca gasped. "You can't sell." "I can. I will. I should have done it years ago." My father stood up, his voice loud. "You're tearing this family apart." I met his gaze. I've been the one holding it together. And then I walked out. No tears, no second glance, just the scrape of my heels against the hardwood and the sound of my own breath steadying. It was the first time in 32 years that I walked away before they asked me to fix something, and for once, I didn't feel like a ghost. I felt real, solid, seen. The silence lasted exactly 12 hours. Then it began. 6 missed calls from Mom, 2 voicemails from Dad, 1 unreadable wall of texts from Rebecca emojis mixed with accusations, guilt disguised as concern, concern twisted into venom. The first voicemail was my mother, her voice tight and trembling. "Malene, what you did was unnecessary. You embarrassed your sister in front of the whole family. She's devastated. Please, come by. Let's talk. We can work this out." The second voicemail was my father's "this stunt at Thanksgiving." "That was cruel, vindictive. We raised you better than that." The messages were about tone, not truth. Not one word about the years I paid, the sacrifices I made, the dreams I folded into neat little squares and buried in my own chest. Only outrage that I had finally publicly said enough. I didn't reply. Instead, I made coffee, opened my laptop, reviewed the contract. 60% ownership, notarized, dated, archived, binding. I emailed my lawyer, "Please proceed with a formal buyout notice. If no offer is received within 30 days, I will initiate public listing options." Professional, precise, unemotional. But inside, I was buzzing like a radio finely tuned to the right frequency. That evening, someone buzzed my apartment. I checked the camera. Mom, eyes red, lips tight, clutching her purse like it held the pieces of her dignity. I let her in. We sat on opposite ends of the couch like polite strangers, pretending this wasn't the slow collapse of a decades-old performance. "You didn't have to do that at dinner," she said softly. "Didn't I?" I replied. "It was a family holiday. So were all the birthdays where Rebecca got applause and I got silence. So were the Christmases where I gave and got a robe." "She's struggling," Malene Mom said. "She always is," I said. "And I've always fixed it. But not anymore." Mom's eyes filled. "She's your sister. She called me useless in front of you," I said. "And you looked away." She was joking. She wasn't. And neither am I. She reached for my hand. I pulled back. "I'm not punishing her," I said. "I'm protecting myself. That's different." A beat of silence. Then almost childlike, she whispered, "So that's it? You're just walking away?" "No," I said, standing. "I'm staying exactly where I am. I'm just done chasing a family that only saw me when I was holding something they wanted." Mom stood too. Her hand hovered near my arm, unsure. "We miss you." "No," I said gently. "You miss what I gave." I opened the door. She stepped out. Didn't look back. Didn't have to. The door closed softly. But on the other side of it, for the first time, was my own life. Untangled, uncompromised, quiet in the best way. 3 days after Thanksgiving, the silence broke again. But not with voices with noise. Emails, voicemails, Rebecca, subject lines urgent, crisis, WTF Maddie. Her cafe's payroll had bounced. 2 suppliers were threatening to walk. Rent on the Queen Anne location hadn't been paid. She needed an immediate injection of capital. She was furious. I had canceled the transfer. And more furious, I hadn't warned her. Her last message, in all caps, "You're killing my dream out of spite. You may own 60%, but I built this. Spite." I stared at the screen and shook my head. No, what I felt wasn't spite. It was stillness. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't responsible for someone else's survival. I forwarded the messages to Erica with a simple note, "Please add to file." That night, the buzzer rang again. This time, It was my father. I hesitated. His voice came through the intercom sharp. "Malene, open up. Don't make this worse." I opened the door slowly. He stepped inside without asking, still in his coat, arms crossed, jaw tight. "You need to fix this," he said. "I'm not the one who broke it," I replied. "This war between you and your sister." "This isn't war," I interrupted. "It's boundaries. That's different. You made her look like a fool at Thanksgiving. She called me useless, and you laughed." His mouth opened, then closed. "That's not the point," he said weakly. "It's exactly the point." He inhaled, held it, exhaled hard through his nose. "Your mother's been crying." "So have I said, "for years, alone." He looked away. "I'm not selling my shares," I added. "If she wants to buy me out, she can make an offer through legal channels." He didn't say goodbye, just slammed the door harder than necessary. But even the slam didn't shake me. I stood still in the echo, let the silence wrap around me like armor. They could call it selfish. I called it sovereignty. That night I didn't double-check my phone. I didn't open my email. I didn't replay what I said at Thanksgiving to see if I'd gone too far. Because for the first time I knew I hadn't gone far enough. The letter arrived in a thick envelope with a gold notary seal. No return address. Just a typed label, Carter v. Carter, fraudulent ownership claim. Rebecca had followed through. I sat on my couch staring at the pages. I pulled out page after page of legal jargon, accusing me of coercion, deceit, and abuse of trust. She claimed I'd manipulated her into signing away majority ownership of her business, that I'd exploited a vulnerable family situation for financial gain, that she hadn't understood what she was signing. She wanted the court to void the contract, to erase the history. Desperate people rewrite the past when the truth becomes unbearable. I forwarded the documents to Erica, my lawyer. 10 minutes later, she called. "She's got no case," Erica said, her voice calm and razor-sharp. "You have emails, bank records, a notarized contract. She took the money. She used it. Her signature's on every page. But it'll still cost me, won't it?" I asked quietly. "Yes. Time. Energy. A few thousand in legal fees. But she won't win." I leaned back on the couch, eyes closed. It was never about winning. It was about being heard. 2 months later, I sat in a small courtroom in Seattle. A wooden bench, cold metal chair, fluorescent lights humming above. I wore navy slacks and a plain blouse, quiet power. Rebecca sat across from me in a designer blazer and too much perfume. Her glare could have sliced glass. She didn't look at me when she walked in. But I looked at her, and I didn't feel hate. I felt history. All the moments I had quietly taped her life together while mine fell apart. Her lawyer argued emotion. Ours presented evidence. We had everything. Emails from Rebecca thanking me for saving her business. Screenshots of her bragging about having an investor. The notarized contract where she initialed every page. The judge didn't even need deliberation. "This agreement is legally binding," he said. "There is no evidence of coercion. Ownership remains 60% in Ms. Malene Carter's name." Rebecca's expression collapsed in real time. Her mouth opened, closed. Her lawyer put a hand on her shoulder. She shook it off like a child having a tantrum in public. I didn't look away. I let her see me, fully, finally. I walked out of that courtroom with more than a legal victory. I walked out whole. That night, I didn't tell anyone. I didn't call my parents, didn't text a single cousin. I poured a glass of wine, lit a candle, and sat by the window watching the rain streak down the glass. I had spent 32 years quietly disappearing into usefulness. Now I was learning how to exist on my own terms. A week later, I received a letter not from a court but from my mother, handwritten, on the same floral stationery she used for grocery lists when I was little. "Dear Malene, I wish things were different. I wish we had seen you earlier. I wish you could forgive us. Rebecca is struggling. Please don't shut the door forever. I folded the letter and placed it in my drawer, not to reread, just to remind myself closure doesn't always come wrapped in apologies. Sometimes it comes in silence you don't chase. I didn't write back, not out of cruelty, but out of clarity. Months passed. The cafe never opened its second location. The Queen Anne lease was lost. A cousin mentioned that Rebecca blamed market conditions. Of course she did. As for the original cafe, it limped along. Barely. No more hidden capital. No more safety net. Just her and the weight of her own decisions. I heard Olivia had to transfer to a public school, that Rebecca was picking up extra shifts, that the suppliers who once gave her grace now asked for cash up front. Meanwhile, I said yes to a new opportunity, director of financial strategy at a nonprofit that empowers young women entrepreneurs. I helped women like me, girls who had been told to be silent, to give everything, to expect nothing. And I began to live, not just exist, live. I started painting again, walked along the waterfront on Sunday mornings, took myself to dinner without checking anyone else's schedule. I bought a real coat, the kind I once imagined I'd wear walking through Manhattan. It didn't make me more valuable, but it made me feel real. Then one day I was invited to speak at a local leadership summit. The topic, invisible labor and the power of saying no. I stood backstage in a soft navy dress, hands trembling slightly. Then the mic was in my hand. The room full of women all looking up, waiting. I began. For years I thought my worth came from how much I gave, from how many fires I could put out without ever asking for thanks. I believed that if I was quiet enough, helpful enough, selfless enough, someone would finally say I mattered. I paused, breathed, and then one day my sister called me useless, and in the silence that followed, I finally heard my own voice. The applause started softly, then grew. I didn't shrink. I didn't apologize. I stood there in the warmth of my own truth and smiled, not for them, not even for Rebecca, for the girl who turned down NYU, for the girl who kept her family's lights on in silence, for the woman who finally said enough. I used to believe love meant giving without question, that if you sacrificed long enough, hard enough, and quietly enough, it would all come back to you, eventually, in a thank you, in a moment of recognition, in a seat at the table where you didn't have to earn your right to be there. But sometimes when you stop giving, you don't get gratitude. You get rage. Because the people who benefited from your silence don't mourn your absence. They mourn their loss of access to you. And that's what I finally understood. Saying no didn't make me cruel. Walking away didn't make me selfish. It made me free. The month after my leadership talk, I got a handwritten card in the mail. No return address, just my name on the envelope. Inside was a single sentence in familiar handwriting. You didn't deserve how we treated you. I'm sorry. No name. But I knew it was from my mom. I folded it and tucked it away. Not to forget, but to remind myself that even when apologies come, they're not a reason to reopen a chapter you've already closed. I didn't call. I didn't send a reply. Some stories don't need sequels. Instead, I invested in something better. I started mentoring young women at the nonprofit. One of them, Aisha, 19, brilliant, raised in foster care, told me, "No one's ever taken me seriously with money stuff. They assume I don't get it." I smiled. I know exactly what that feels like. I showed her how to create a financial plan for the Etsy shop she wanted to scale. 6 months later, she landed her first wholesale contract with a local boutique. We went out for boba and celebrated. She paid for my drink and said, "You believed in me before I believed in myself." I nearly cried, because that's what I'd longed to hear. Not from her, from the people who raised me. But here's the thing. Sometimes the healing comes not from getting what you were owed, but from giving what you never got to someone who's ready to receive it. I built a new life brick by brick in the silence left behind. Not lonely, just clean, honest. When I passed by Rebecca's cafe one rainy afternoon, I noticed the window sign had changed. It no longer said family owned, it said under new management. I paused for a moment, not out of curiosity, but out of closure. She had finally sold, or someone had bought her out. I didn't check, didn't ask. Some things don't need confirmation, only release. As I walked past, the rain hit my coat softly, rhythmically. Each drop a reminder that I was no longer someone else's foundation. I was my own. And for the first time in my life, I didn't wonder if they missed me. I didn't care. I had missed myself for so long, and now I was finally home. Have you ever been the one who kept things running while everyone else got the credit, ever felt invisible until you stopped giving? Tell me your story in the comments. And if this hit you somewhere deep, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because you deserve to be seen, not for what you give, but for who you are.